Peace be with you. Freedom or liberty cannot exist without morality, and morality cannot exist without sincere obedience to God, without sincere obedience to the basic set of moral principle that every single prophet has brought. All of these are the same. Whether you read the Bible or the Quran, you will see that these basic precepts are the same. God demands that we respect our family, that we respect our parents. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not bear false witness, you will not be a liar, you will not covet other people's property, you will not commit fornication. Whatever you see in 10 Commandments or what God deems Sirat al-Mustaqim or the straight path in the Quran, this is the core of faith, and without sincere obedience to that, you cannot have liberty. So when God says in the Quran, for example, in the 3rd chapter of the Quran, verse 85, and whoever desires a deen, a way of life or a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted from him, and in the hereafter he will be one of the losers. This is what it's talking about. People have perverted this word Islam to basically just mean adherence to a religion or belonging to a religion, but that is not what it means. The word Islam means submission to God or obedience to God, meaning doing what God told you to do. And if you read the Bible, for example, in Matthew 12, starting at verse 46, you will see the prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, demanded the same thing. Basically, the story goes, he was talking to a crowd and his mother and brothers came to see him, and he answered, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" Pointing to his disciples, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers, for whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." So basically the Arabic word for that, what he described, is Islam. Whoever does the will of the Father. That is what the word Islam means. So don't let the language confuse you. God always demanded sincere obedience to a set of moral principle without which liberty cannot exist. And this is what even the people who preceded us, like even here on the North American continent, they tried to explain this to us. For example, George Washington in his farewell address in 1796 said, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that a man claim the tribute of patriotism who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and cherish them. A volume could not trace all their connections with private and public felicity. Let it simply be asked, where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of religious obligation deserts the oaths which are the instruments of investigation in the courts of justice? And let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in the exclusion of religious principle." So even they saw this. Without sincere obedience to God, you have nothing. You cannot have liberty. And this is why John Adams wrote, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." If you have immoral people and you give them liberty, what's going to happen? Edmund Burke actually wrote a quote about this, which I find very powerful. He said, "But what is liberty without wisdom and without virtue? It is the greatest of all possible evils, for it is folly, vice, and madness, without tuition or restraint. Those who know what virtuous liberty is cannot bear to see it disgraced by incapable heads on account of their having high-sounding words in their mouths." What do you do? What happens when you have freedom of the press and freedom of the speech, but those who use it are immoral? You get slander in the press, you get propaganda, you get manipulation, and you get people fighting each other. What do you get when people have liberty, but they decide to be drug addicts and criminals and attack their neighbors? What do you do when you give people liberty and they decide to become rapists? What you do is then you decide that you need someone to protect you, so you give power to somebody to protect you, but that somebody now has power over you, and you have lost a piece of your liberty. People think that religion is this set of superstitions and cultural norms which they have an option to obey, right? But both in the Bible and the Quran, God says only sincere submission, only sincere obedience will be accepted. And all of us are sinners. All of us have that inside of us. All of us have greed inside of us. All of us have lust inside of us. All of us have desires inside of us. All of us have rage inside of us. And if you are an honest person, if you are actually trying to control those things, then you know it is difficult. Only those who are not trying to control those things out of religious devotion don't know how difficult they are to control, because they indulge in them. And all they do is make excuses. They are hypocrites, and they are blind to their own evil. This is why the only way to maintain liberty is through morality. And the only way to maintain morality is when people choose sincerely to obey the set of principles that were defined by God and repeated through each and every prophet. Everything else is destruction. You can look around you and see. Peace be with you.